Good evening, everyone. System Shock here with the 127th episode of Book of Hours, playing as the artist with the Bee Silk Journal, Picasso. I'll give you Picasso. The artist came to Hush House to shape and share a history of primal, ultimate, unprecedented experience. But you can complete the game by recording any history. You might wish to begin your studies with the Bossk Wisdom. The artist, data was a start. The Surrealist Manifesto, a step along the road, but only a step. The road goes nowhere unless it goes into the wood, and that's a road you can only walk in the dark. Wait, no, not in the dark. In blood. Hip deep in blood. Oh, shut up, give it to me, I'll write it. Alright, so we were opening up the Gaping Darkness. That will happen in a few seconds. We are working our way towards being able to listen to another photograph and read the White Book of Brittany, and then we'll hope that we can generate some memories that will allow us to level those up as well, but it's not, it doesn't quite have the same urgency as some of the others. So let's just run ahead and see what the day brings us. The Hermit's Cell. The words Red William are scratched into the wall by the bed nook. This was the name of the cunning man who laid a curse on Hendrik de Wolf, and there would be no seventh of his line. The cunning man that Hendrik de Wolf gelded and imprisoned beneath the house. But this doesn't look like a cell. There would have been no locks. Perhaps that other story is true, that William was an initiate of the Thunderskin, secretly maintained by Hendrik to prophesy for him in the ancient manner. Who were the de Wolfs, really? So I do kind of like the fact that every once in a while there are other... So you kind of think it's like, okay, we're well into the Dawn period, or we're well into the Curia period, but there are actually a couple of baronial period rooms, and this is one of them. Obviously, it adds a little more to one of the characters that we've only briefly seen mentioned elsewhere. It is also fair to say that this is slightly more interesting when you have the other bit of information about Red William. But when I first played this game, I actually found out about the other story of Red William from this room as well, so it's consistent with the way that I've experienced the game. Inside this room, we've got another quire of paper, parabate, and a tiny potted tree. We have the Hermit's workbench. So I know a few of you have probably noticed that I've been looking for a sky workbench. It was this one I was looking for. Obviously, I'm a little bit better at remembering the existence of certain workbenches rather than their locations. So we've got the Hermit's workbench, which gives us a little bit more variety in terms of being able to combine certain elements. We have Ugal ink. We have got January Sanguinary, or the True Blood of St. Januarius. We've got some wine, so Domaine Reveline, Schloss Jannings, Dandelion Wine, Lambrig Broslunde, and Domaine Reveline. We've got, second bottle of it. And we've got 3 books, so 2 Dawn Period books, 1 Baronial Period. We already have this room, which we're going to be unlocking, and we've now gained access to the Perilous Path, which requires Moon or Rose, both of which are... essentially we'd be waiting for winter if we wanted to take advantage of the Fisherman. This came up in the comments earlier. So the Fisherman is guaranteed, but there are higher powered visitors who can come in. And in that case, I'm just risking an element of the soul. And it may be that I don't wind up getting what I need. But again, we've held off on doing that just simply because when I first played this to completion, one of the things that I did was I resisted committing elements of the soul to the Tree of Wisdoms just to see if I could do it, because when I first played the game in the beta, I actually committed skills to the Tree of Wisdoms quite early, and it was so because I was trying to sort of beat challenges by having more or more powerful elements of the soul. And because, again, when the game first comes out, most people, that will be the first time that they've played it, right? Most people don't get to play in the betas, and I was very lucky that Weather Factory didn't just invite me to the beta, but allowed me to stream it during that period. But I think for those of you that have been long-term viewers of the stream will know, one of the things I like to do to kind of keep the game fresh is to try different approaches. So for Cultist Simulator, that can sometimes mean different patterns on the desktop, or that can sometimes mean keeping certain patterns that I rely on to run ahead. I can maybe hold those back. And I find it easy because these are role-playing games, right? So you can express yourself through the type of character that you play. And in the case, I feel this is a little bit easier with Cultist Simulator personally, but you can do the same with Book of Hours as well. So, for instance, there's a lot of talk in for Cultist Simulator that the optimal way to play is to do a lot of physical labor at the start, right? Because you get the vitality memories from that. You can use that to level up your health. You become very strong, and not only is it a decent way to make some money because it takes less time if you're very strong, but you also you get more health, which means it's harder to die, and that's completely fine. If your goal for that game is to if your goal for the game is to minimize the chance of an involuntary ending, it's very hard to argue with that approach to the game. But for me, because I feel quite comfortable with the game, it doesn't mean that I don't lose. It just means that for the most part, I will lose less than when I first played the game. What I'll sometimes do is I'll say, well, I'm playing the bright young thing, right? And sometimes it's interesting as a character, because of course we all have this for ourselves as well. There are certain lines that you don't cross. So for instance, as the bright young thing, I would imagine someone like this might be very reluctant to do physical labor. So it may not be fun to go to Glover and Glover. You may hate Mr. Alden, and of course that could inspire maybe some of the actions that you will take against Mr. Alden. But the idea of going and doing construction work after living as the bright young thing, it's kind of hard to imagine, at least for me in terms of my conception of when I play that character, it's actually kind of hard for me to imagine doing that. And the decision to go and do some kind of physical labor represents a change to a character. I always think it's interesting when you have those lines that you won't cross, and then if circumstances become sufficiently desperate to do that. It's also like opium, right? So for me, the idea of any kind of narcotic to make myself feel better, that's pretty rare. I mean, I remember I got my wisdom teeth out. I didn't take any of the Tylenol 3 that they assigned, or they gave me. It's not like I don't have some sort of like deep concern about it. It's just I didn't really feel it was necessary. Again, I was in pain, but like it's like, okay, I'll do it if like this is like really bad. It never got to the like really bad moment for me. So, again, the idea of me using opium to overcome, despair, that would, to me, be a pretty significant change in my circumstances. But I also need to allow for the possibility that, like, my life isn't over yet. There are all sorts of things that could happen. And clearly this is something that people have done. I mean, obviously, in history, maybe the understanding of the effects are a bit different. I mean, although, again, in the time that Cultist Simulator takes place, it's not exactly like opium is considered to be, you just get that with your Coke at the, at the corner store. These are the sorts of things which, if you want to add another dimension to it, for me, I do sort of like getting into the role. And so it also gives me the advantage of having a certain challenge. So I learned quite a bit in terms of Book of Hours by not committing things to the Tree of Wisdoms. Now, obviously, in this case, I've been much more comfortable doing it. In fact, I would probably choose a different path in terms of Book of Hours at this point. There are a couple of things that maybe I would do differently. Well, I don't know. Not as many as it seems, I think, actually. But yeah, I am kind of interested in seeing where I go with some of these decisions in the Tree of Wisdoms. And one of the things that allowed me to do that, not that challenge, but that run without using the Tree of Wisdoms, was the fact that I eventually found that I could hire these special hirelings. Well, this time around, I'm willing to commit things to the Tree of Wisdoms. But right now, I've wanted to see how much of the house I can get through sort of the quote-unquote guaranteed visitors. And right now, the answer to that is quite a bit. And I suspect I'll be able to unlock the whole house without hiring a special visitor. Whether or not I do it or don't do it, again, that's a separate question. With most of these things, it's a question of necessity. And I just simply have too many things to do. And not enough time in the day anyway, so I just haven't seen the need to risk the elements of the soul for those visitors. But it can be a fun way to, again, remove those things that you rely on and just get a different idea of how you can overcome certain challenges, because it teaches you a little bit more about how the game works, and for me at least, it's allowed me to sort of appreciate some of the design of the game in a way that I wouldn't necessarily have if I kept using the same tricks. And again, for me, this is a way that even if I've played this game for a while, I can still get excited by it and still feel like I'm doing something new. Even in the case of Cultist Simulator, which isn't getting any new DLC, or a game like this where we're just waiting for the House of Light. All right, I've carried the memory like a flambeau safe through the mazes of night. So again, we're waiting on a sky or a heart for this. The clouds aren't going to help me, but we can get by. And yeah, we'll see how the rest of the day goes. I know I spent a lot of time chatting, so we will spend our time chatting, but with Mrs. Kill in this case. I'm also slowly creeping towards this game, this goal. A game, sorry, goal, not game, of getting all the flowers out of Elopolis Nook. The thread parts, the weave is empty, the skies cry out. Eagerly we anticipate our work. Oh, it did occur to me that I am actually going to need to use... I'm going to need to get a different memory. The inescapable confinement is not appropriate for what I want to do here. And that creates a little bit of awkwardness because of how I've tied up my elements of the soul. So, the first thing I'm going to do here is the spice scales. So, proffer a tool, I can lend my assistant something to help, increasing their abilities. So for here, the things that I need are so Mrs. K, Arab Plus, Spice Scales, yeah, so it's Newman and the Witching Tisane, so I actually only have another minute. That's a real shame. So what I'm going to do as a backup plan... I'll maybe start by double checking that a tower fall. So if I can read a tower falls now, I'll just push that ahead. Oops. Interesting. So I can't use the Edict's Liminal for that. Wow, this is going to be a tough one. Now, I think this is because there's a second phonograph in this game now. But man, this is going to be a really tricky one. Oh, but we are so close too. Okay. Let's say I have a pattern on the way. Okay, no, I know how I can do this. No, it doesn't quite work, actually. So this is just on the border of being doable, but I need an answer to the question, how do I... Well, maybe. Okay, so Edict's Liminal is not available. Preliminal meter. So this will take any memory, so we can add the pattern. Okay, so we only need 30 seconds for that. So that will apply the Faust. The Whist we'll still use for the Winter. So the Shaft is what we will use to get to read the Sun Disfigured. Alright, yes. I can recover the day. It's going to be a weird day, but we can recover this. Alright, I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. I am going to need to be on my best behavior, though, in terms of the timing of things. And I think I'm going to try and get clever with the... with the lessons today. I don't want to waste this storm. Glimmerings, an anonymous prison diary written by a dreamer convicted of oniric irresponsibility and confined to the cucurbit. The prisoner is plainly terrified and bewildered by their situation, and has been unable to wrangle a coherent explanation out of anyone, but the dreams keep coming and they keep writing them down. Snow, broken mirrors, half-heard sky music, flowers of white, red, and black, a blood-streaked winter dawn, the most notorious signifiers of oniric risk, fantastically vivid and detailed. No wonder they were locked up. Their final recorded dream is of a worm jewel beneath Brankrug Isle, which they open with a key carved from their finger bone. This will be something you might want to remember for the next little bit. Okay. Heart Unceasing, Apollo and Marsyas, the libretto of a lost opera concerning the contest between Apollo and Marsyas and its tragic outcome. The librettist is identified only by their initials. In the original myth, Marsyas lost the musical contest and was flayed by Apollo, who later regretted it. In this version, Marsyas' skin has a further history. The skin of Marsyas gives oracles and is later smuggled to Phrygia, where the priestesses of Cybele use it for a drum. At the climax, the striking of the drum drives would-be violators of the priestesses to suicidal madness. The opera ends with a wistful hymn from the youngest priestess on the beauty of mountain pines. And on imperfections, Pomander, Lightsmith, and Lantern Long describes the process of transinhabitation, which he calls a manifestation of imperfection. Lantern Long lack bodies, and so cannot normally leave the mansis, but they can steady glint in the physical world by establishing a road of glass. Pomander notes with disgust that the Order of Long called the Obliviates refer to it as scrining, which he considers a debased term. Pomander explains the benefits of transinhabitation, that a Lantern Long can affect the senses and thoughts of those nearby, that they can even enter their spirits, and that they can employ the senses of those inhabited to experience again the scent of blossom and season. This seems to be what interests him the most. He insists that a Lantern Long should only ever inhabit a mirror of silver, not silvered glass, but he declines to explain why. Okay, let's see. Let's try and get this set right. So we will use our Faust with the phonograph, and we will use that to listen to A Tower Falls. We do that with preliminal meter. We will add inescapable confinement because we'll lose it otherwise. We'll add the pattern, and the language is in Vac. Knock, a gate flung wide. I am a match for this book. Enough knock to match mystery knock. For winter, we will go to the Pale Desk. Solomon Husher himself commissioned this from Lockwood Fen Boggu, blackened and half fossilized by centuries underwater. Here, at this desk, he wrote his doomy allegory of winter and its romance with the sun. When he blotted the last word on his manuscript and rose from his work, the timber had turned pale as fresh-cut maple, or so the story goes. So we will add the bittersweet certainty. We will... Oh dear. I do not have the winter that I need. Well, let's double-check that. But I suspect I don't have the winter required for the White Book of Brittany. Let's see what's available. Quenchings and Quellings is my next best. Cool, we did have enough. I can master this mystery. Alright, now, what I want to do in 3 seconds, so we've taken care of the manual labor, I want to try and bring back strings and songs. I really only have my health right now, though, so we'll give it a couple seconds. It is spring, and the landlady has served me a slice of her stargazy pie with the pilchard heads poking cheekily through the hot crust. The stool has boosted their aspects appropriately. So for Mrs. Kill, we had the Newman, which we're working on, and it was the Witching to Sane we were going to give her next. I can offer my assistants something to drink. This will increase their aspects. They'll also be glad of the refreshment. So I'm just trying to think if I've got Sacra Lamea, so that if we're going to try and read, and I don't think we will, but so the Invisible Opera, I've got 6, 11. Yeah, so I need the Faust for it. I could use the Ascendant Harmony in a pinch. Well, we'll see. I do have a use for the Memory Storm if it comes down to it, but a little water splashes on the stones of the well to nourish the mosses there. So I'll bring back this core when I can. Right now we're bringing back the health, but I think the core is slightly more useful for me right now. With Keeper level Winter, Solomon's preparations are a precursor to the Great Ink Nillicant. And Ruby-Wise Ruin with Keeper level Grail. Ruby-Wise Ruin is the precursor to the Sacrament Callicite, which is helpful, but not something we need right now. Alright, The Sun Disfigured, a scroll of anthropoderm parchment written in the golden ink called Uzalt. The author of this text calls herself the Elegabline. Sometimes she seems to be Sunset Celia, the Watchman's name. Sometimes she seems to be Lady Tryphon, the Grail Long. It is unclear whether these are separate entities or the same person. It may be unclear even to the writer. The flaws in the Sun's plan are elucidated. The Sun's plan itself is never entirely clear, but it is a project of some kind to enter, possess, or surrender to the glory, the pure light above the mansus. This book suggests ways in which that plan might fail. The Sun's sins and the Sun's scars are our salvation. There are histories where they will trap us, prevent us rising to eternity. Down to the Grecians. Alright, finally we take Mrs. Kill, we use the Sun's weakness. I can discuss a memory with my assistant. We only needed 12, but 13 is fine. I'm not going to split hairs about that. And at that point, we're going to be able to talk with Mrs. Kill about leveling up strings and songs. Better now. There's not much work on offer in Brandkrug, but I can find 6 pence worth of odd jobs. Alright. Mrs. Kill has seen more of the world than she usually lets on. Conversations with her yield the occasional surprise. So again, what we're hoping for here still is Heart or Sky. We do have the backup of the Storm or the Memory Storm. But I would like... I guess the Storm proper isn't something that I can preserve. So that's my outside option. But I would, if I can, prefer to use it for something else. We'll explain that in a little bit. Okay, regret. There it is in Camino Tizzer. Mrs. Kill, as every local gossip knows, came from France to marry Mr. Kill, but there's scant trace of the continent in her accent now. Now, that's not a terrible one for me to get, because depending on what happens with the White Book of Brittany, I suspect it will be Inks of Containment, and so we're not going to be able to work with it. But overall, it would be nice if I can... if I can't... Or actually, they did say it was about death lore, so maybe it's not a book about inks. But yeah, if I can somehow get the Faust ready to go, even if I have to read the book overnight, it would still be nice to get another phonograph down. Okay, The White Book of Brittany, a volume of death lore gifted to St. Brendan's by Brian of Brittany, who was made Earl of Cornwall after the Norman conquest. The white flower lies heavy, but the roots of the watchman's tree run deeper than snow. The white flower is described as the death of wisdom, but wisdom can pass into sleep, not death, when the rage of glass is subjected to sufficiently powerful winter aspect, while the ragged crossroads arts are invoked. I gotta think about what the rage of glass is, but there's our ragged crossroads. And a hindsight. Can we fit you in? Yes. And here we go. A tower falls. The phonograph is packaged in glossy amethyst purple card with the words "A tower falls" in 9 languages on both sides. There is no other identifying information at all. A recording of uncertain origin, inexplicably compelling poetry recorded by a speaker with a rasping, rumbling, impossibly deep voice in the language called Vac, which probably isn't spoken by more than a few dozen living scholars. The poem speaks of a 4-winged war, a 4-mouthed king, a 4-rayed sun, a 4-cornered stone. It speaks of a tide-washed hunger of the heart. It speaks lastly of its own conclusion, when it might be spoken in dreams before the deep door by a messenger of histories. So confounding parable, I'll make a note there. Oh, nuts. Okay. I'm pretty sure it's a cheerful ditty. It was a cheerful ditty. Ooh, lots of preliminal meters. So that'll be our next level 9, but we are going to be putting a lot of effort into getting that leveled up. So that's an indicator to me that maybe I want to cool it on new skills for a while. Okay. So the confounding parable is helpful because that will level up strings and songs for me. The ragged crossroads might work. So it's currently sitting at... Ooh. Alright, so we just need to get some edge and winter back. So I think the rest of the day is actually going to be spent spending money to bring back these elements of the soul. As I used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. So let's go first with Faust. Tuppence will buy me a hearty meal in a quiet place where I can rest and gather my thoughts. Alright, we got fear for our trouble. That will help me with the ragged crossroads. There it is in Camino Tizzer. Mrs. Kill, as every local gossip knows, came from France to marry Mr. Kill, but there's scant trace of the continent in her accent now. So I think I'm going to say let's not worry about preliminal meter today. So we'll get preliminal meter, we'll get whist, and maybe Arab back. Okay, more regrets. So right now I'm really just trying to make the most of the memories that emerge, and the big constraint on me right now is just how quickly I can bring back elements of the soul. If I try to restore an element of the soul through bed rest, I'm gonna lose it for the next day, which isn't the worst thing that can happen, but okay, now unfortunately I'm still going to be coming up short, so I'm happy with the Faust. I'm going to bring back a core now. I'm actually only going to be able to bring back one of these. Well, it's a shame, but it is what it is. So with the Faust, this will seem a little reckless, but there is a plan. Actually, I might be doing this a bit early, but you only YOLO once. I can master this mystery, enough sky to match mystery sky. And I think what I'll do, just to make my life a little easier, I'll put a tower rises at the end of this shelf. It's not so much that I think I can read this. In fact, I almost certainly can't. But it's a little bit more convenient as far as storage is concerned, just if I have that sort of sitting in front of me. Okay, intuition. So at this point, generating the memories is kind of... It's not exactly a waste, but there's not a whole lot that I can do with it. But I am going to level up strings and songs. I'll try and preserve what I can for Ragged Crossroads, but I don't think I'm going to be able to save that much. And we may or may not use Reverend Timothy to get the Slithering Fountain open. So yeah, if I try and bring back an element of the soul now, it's not going to be back before the end of the day, which means that I waste the money and I don't get anything in return. Better now. Alright, so again, strings and songs, we have what we need, so we will adjust accordingly. Confounding Parable for sure. I guess I can keep either one of these. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, I mean, none of these really... We'll use the Satisfaction. Although I guess the Confounding Parable would have... No, never mind. I'm talking nonsense. I'm no expert, but I'm no dabbler either. Improve the skill to level 3. We are still talking with Mrs. Kill, so we'll see what comes out of that. Okay, another solace. There it is and can be no tizzer. Mrs. Kill, as every local gossip knows, came from France to marry Mr. Kill, but there is scant trace of the continent in her accent now. So, what we are going to do for the end of the day... The clouds are not relevant, but basically we've got a hindsight, regret, fear, solace, and intuition. So the first question we want to ask is, of these, what is the most relevant towards what I want to advance? And on top of that, what am I able to preserve? So out of these, okay, I can only keep the solace. So this is a lot easier than I thought. The catch also is that this doesn't actually help me with my current goal, but that's life, right? We'll keep what we can. We will open up the next room. So, the wing-haunted cave. A drunken whirl of bats drives me back, perhaps literally drunken. There is a faint but definite brandy smell. All right. So, lots to do for Friday. We're going to probably use Reverend Timothy to go further. I'm not sure yet. I think I do need to put quite a bit of attention into leveling up Preliminal Meter. And I'm also going to have the results from the Invisible Opera. In fact, we're probably going to finish this before the night. I was actually originally planning on doing this just to cross over into the morning. Anyways, it doesn't matter. I'll have my Faust back, so that's not too bad. But yeah, I'll probably hold back a little bit on generating new skill, or like new lessons. I don't have anything that I really need the miners to help me with. So in this case here, like the Slithering Fountain, we can get Reverend Timothy to help us out with. I guess they get a little, what is it, if I do a half crown? They offer Scale, Forge, and a little Moon, and if I want a lot of Moon, well, I can just get that. I can just get that in winter. But, and then of course we have the remaining books to catalog. It might be that there are things that are a little more interesting for me to study than what I currently have here. So I will put that on the list too. But my suspicion is that our next steps will be to take care of the Slithering Fountain and the Crystallized Chamber. That will be happening tomorrow and next week. So until tomorrow, take care.